The Fenway has been losing ground on affordable housing for a number of years. Along the way, there have been some gains, but also the steady proliferation of college students living off campus. Local activists have been trying to hold the line, in particular at a building near Berklee College of Music that's owned by another institutional neighbor, the Christian Science Church. To tell us what's been happening are a board member with the Fenway Community Development Corporation, Andre Jones, and longtime Fenway activist, Bob Case. Thank you both very much for being with us. I want to start with Bob. Your take on what's going on here just as a resident and how the neighborhood is changing.
Well, I guess it goes back to the urban renewal, which was also a kind of a product of the Christian Science Church collaborating with the Boston Redevelopment Authority. A number of things happened during that period that have resulted in great harm to the Fenway as a functioning residential creative neighborhood. The people have bounced back in many ways, but I think that there is a great threat to the neighborhood. It's one of the really great neighborhoods. It's a diverse neighborhood. Lots of creative people have been there in the past, musicians and artists, painters, regular residents who love to live in a resource-rich area. It's been racially integrated in a very natural way. All that is under threat as this kind of what I would call not just gentrification, but super gentrification is going on. It involves the institutions, and it involves the growth of those institutions beyond all bounds. The business that we're getting into here, which is that Clearway Street has now become very, very expensive housing, $3,600 for a two-bedroom unit. This is really beyond all kind of expectation of the neighborhood. That pushes everybody else and causes displacement not only for the people who used to live on Clearway Street, but for the neighborhood generally. So there is this kind of steamroll process that's going on, which we want to reverse.
Andre, the bigger story that you're all too familiar with is that college students, they go into the housing market voluntarily, and just through market forces, they drive out other people. So how is what's going on here different from that?
Yeah, that's a good question, Chris. It's very different because there's an acceptance of students integrating themselves into the community via the marketplace, and that some people, there may be a market force that needs to be modified there too. But in this instance, all institutions are accountable to an institutional master plan. That's a negotiated plan with the city, with the neighborhood they abut, okay? Berkeley has an institutional master plan. So what that does cover is instances where a university institution would master lease buildings or building for a dormitory or even office space, okay? So in this case, what happened was Berkeley, with the church and the church's agents, they went about master leasing a number of contiguous buildings on Clearway Street, mostly the two-bedroom units.
Now, I got to interject here. The city says there never was anything that was formally a master lease. And Berkeley said, well, we might have referred some students, but we were promised there would be no displacement.
Yeah, and this is the troubling thing. I'm sure the city has somewhat competent attorneys, and they understand that you don't have to have memorialize something in writing as long as the behavior indicates there's a contract. But we laid out facts to the Boston Redevelopment Authority, okay, and Inspectional Services Department, and to the best of our knowledge, what happened was this. Berkeley entered into an agreement with the Christian Science Church and with their agents. They facilitated that by giving notices to quit to the existing tenants on Clearway Street.
Now, who gave those notices? Was it
that
the property owners, the rental agents?
It would have been maybe the property management firm that, for the church.
Real estate firm, okay.
In late July of 2014, after they had already kind of entered into some understanding, Berkeley approached the Boston Redevelopment Authority and as to master lease that block of Clearway Street. After some community opposition, including some opposition from task force members for the institutional master plan, the BRA decided they could not support a master lease. The Boston Redevelopment Authority on August 14th, 2014 said we can't support the master lease. Despite that, Berkeley went forward with residing their students on Clearway Street. On August 17, 2014, we have a correspondence from Berkeley to parents and students saying they had reserved spaces on Clearway Street. In other words, logic would tell you that in order to facilitate the move-in of September 1st, this had been a fait accompli. Now, the BRA says we can't do anything because this was not reduced to writing. But law recognizes a contract in fact. It's just what it is. They performed as if it was a master lease. It is a master lease.
Coming back to Bob, what do you think should be done about this right now?
Well, I think one of the things you want to look at here is you want to ask yourself why these institutions would allow themselves to be able to be portrayed as being very greedy institutions and very arrogant institutions, both Berkeley and the Christian Science Church, in view of the things that we've been talking about. And I'm sure that's the effect that people see. It looks like a greedy and arrogant movement on the part of the institutions. The reason for that is that the Boston Redevelopment Authority has a history of allowing these kind of developments to go forward. And when that happens, the institutions, as institutions, see only as far as their own benefit and only as far as their own advantage. And as a result, we have these institutions growing all out of proportion because they're being enabled by the Boston Redevelopment Authority. They have this history of accepting and of even encouraging this sort of thing.
Andre, a couple of other things here to consider. Berkeley says they still want to build more dorms, and on the other hand, the church, if I recall from Adrian Walker's column, says that they might just sell these apartments anyhow. So what's to do here?
Well, I mean, the church is free. The church is free to sell the buildings.
And there goes your affordable housing.
Well, possibly. That's possibly true. But to understand what Bob had brought up before is that there's this serious encroachment of institutions. And the way I would phrase it for listeners is this. The institutions have to decide whether they want to be part of the community or they want to become the community. And the way they're acting and have acted and have been allowed to act is they are trying to become the community, as if there's nothing else there. There's no permanent residence there. The Clearway Street was fairly moderate income housing, okay? Now, with students having moved in there, now Berkeley has represented it, a lot of the students have moved out, it becomes unaffordable. Not only that, Chris, it becomes unaffordable but not nice housing necessarily, because it's not really updated. It's just that what they basically did is on the 2-bedroom apartments is jam 4 students in a 670 square foot 2-bedroom apartment for $3,600. They couldn't have got that on the market.
Right. Neighborhood change. Thank you both very much, Andre Jones and Bob Case.